So here it is. See, this whole thing with letting go has to do with the steps, and what is it related to the food? And I just said it. What's the solution so we can have the spiritual solution right now? Because hey, look, if we go right to the big book and we talk about this on page 24. Well, actually, before that, the doctor's opinion, he tells us he says the modern medical scientists, all the doctors at the time couldn't figure out an answer to the problem. So what does he say? What does it say throughout the whole book? It has to be a spiritual solution. So what is that spiritual solution? So here, let me go quickly into the problem. Actually, the problem really starts in Bill's story, and this is related to our addiction in our lives. And then we're going to have the resolution to this, because the answer is in the spirituality, the 12 steps, having had that spiritual awakening. Unless we do have that spiritual awakening, the doctor's opinion says they couldn't cure these people. There was no other way out. And in Bill's story on page 8, he says what? On the first full paragraph, no words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in the bitter morass of self-pity. Here he is into the self. Bill said he wanted to be a famous stockbroker. He wanted to be a famous golfer in the beginning. It's all about Bill and what he wants to do in life. Quicksand stretched all around me in all directions. So my life, when I take my self-will back with my addictions and with my life situation trying to control it, the quicksand was all around me. That's depression. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol or food was my master. So here he goes. He talks about the problem. But what does Bill say shortly after that? He says in the next paragraph in the middle, he says, I was soon to be catapulted in what I call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness and peace of usefulness in a way of life that's incredibly more wonderful as time passes. So, if we're dealing with our addictions to life, compulsive behaviors, bulimia, anorexia, whatever it is, or trying to control life or people and situations, we're coming from the self. The ego will set us wrong all the time. So here's the real problem. If you go to page 24, right, in the big book. On page 24, and the name of the chapter is called There's a Solution. Again, I always kid about this. Why do they call this chapter There is a Solution? But if we have to listen, not with our brains, but through our heart. But first it tells, look, we go to meetings, we maybe talk about our problem, but we're either in the problem or solution. So here it talks about in one paragraph about the problem, but the rest of it's all about the solution. And it says, on page 24, the fact is that most alcoholics or food addicts, for reasons yet obscured, have lost the power and the choice of drinking or eating. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of suffering, humiliation of even a week or month ago. We were without defense against the first drink. So our self-will can't do it. Again, that meeting, weighing and measuring. Also, again, when people are talking not only about their food, but they would, people would talk about their food and they say, but life is okay, it's still a struggle, I'm trying to figure this out, I'm fearful of that. See, it's all the same thing. The surrender comes into life or in the food. So when you want to attack your food through the self-will, so it's telling us here where the answer is. And again, throughout this book, and it goes here from There is a Solution to We Agnostics. So let me read on page 25. In the second paragraph, it says, when therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved. So let me ask you a question. Here's the question. If you're still, look, 95% of diets fail. So I could start with that premise. So I know, you can't disagree with me on that. And we know in our own lives. We don't even have to do research. We could know our own lives. So the answer isn't in the control. We tried every day with the Nutrisystem, the Weight Watchers, right? Jenny Craig, all of these diet programs, we tried very hard to control it. It didn't work, to no avail. We just read on page 24, no matter what thinking, no matter how much force we did. So it says the problem had been solved. So here we're going to get the solution to the problem, which is going to be unintuitively. Common sense becomes uncommon sense. In our mind, we feel we do it a different way, but here's what it says. There was nothing left for us to do but pick up this spiritual toolkit. So my life became so miserable. I came into Overeaters Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. I called it the last house on the block. I just hit bottom. I had nowhere else to go. And we came to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. How hopeless? Look, 95% of diets fail, but the 5% that continue are miserable. Even though they say, for years I've been on this diet, they're always still, if you're weighing and measuring your food, you're miserable, right? I mean, if you have to go to that extent, you're resisting it. Look, resistance doesn't work. It's when we bring in this, I'm going to read it here, bring in this consciousness, this higher power towards our relationship to food. Okay, here we go again with, and I talk about the clarity. When we have the clarity, we see this through God's eyes. Do we want all those gloopy drinks? And I have here an orange, an apple, right? I have here a banana. All of these things are God-given. They're not the synthetic foods. I have lists here of over here on this side here. I got all these papers which talks about, well, first of all, it talks about all the health problems we have from all of this. And this other paper here talks about all the crazy ingredients that are in the foods. And I mean, I just got papers and papers. Another one talks about the corporations, on how in the corporations they have not only scientists, they have psychologists trying to figure out how your food should be, right? How the bliss point they call it. Here's the article. It's called the bliss point. The bliss point. I also have some positive stuff here. I have some quotes from the Bible, which talks about, our body being God's temple, having that perception change spirituality. I just wanted to bring it because I have all this stuff here, so I wanted to bring it up anyway. I mean, it's just crazy. All of this article and all this reading, all of these self-help books I had, shelves full of them, all of this nonsense never helped me one bit. The self, I had to get out of the self to find the self. It was all about me and trying to intellect, right? When I bring in, okay, we're going to read it right now. On page 25, here it goes. And I read, the problem was solved. But how is the problem solved? Picking up that simple spiritual toolkit. What is a simple spiritual toolkit? The 12 steps. Okay, so what is my diet program? The 12 steps. I better read, because I started out talking about meditation, getting centered in prayer. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for His knowledge, for His will for us, and the power to carry that out. His will, God's will, is for us to be healthy. He made us with the brains and the soul, and the body's in its perfect mechanism. The heart works. He created us to be happy, joyous, and free. The way we know that is because, look, when we stop thinking, getting out of the self, when we're in the present, we're happy. All our problems, our thoughts have to do with the past, planning the past, or regretting the future. It's all, look, I know I'm going all over the place with all of this stuff, but it all comes down to one thing: getting centered. That's why I started the meeting prayer. Being centered. If I have a problem today with my food addiction, the answer is to get centered, to be in God's grace, to see the water for what it is, to change my perception, not to believe the craziness, the insanity. Step 2 said we had to be restored to sanity. The corporations, what they're telling us about the food, we're believing that. It's like the corporations are worse than the crack dealer, cocaine dealer on the corner. Would we listen to them? No, but we listen, and for our children's sake, and to go into the supermarkets. The food has, I told you, it has 50 ingredients. I could read them more. 50 ingredients. It's crazy. There's 50. Pick up the food if you don't believe. You don't have to read this. Pick up a box of food. It has like 50 different ingredients in it. 49 of them are poison. 49 of them cause the SOS, salt, oil, and sugar. They're causing the calories. Something that could be like 100 calories, when you put all that stuff in, it will be 3 times 300 calories. A drink, water is so delicious. Meditate on that. When you meditate, they have what they call the chakras and getting centered, called body scan and being relaxed. When you're centered with God's will, you don't want that synthetic stuff. You want the natural beauty that He created. What could be better than this? Meditate. You want to meditate this? I call this a meditation. Meditate on this. Meditate on this, not the man-made stuff. Look how beautiful this is, and God created it. This is what we were meant to be. To perception change. We can't do it the other way. On these diets, these crazy corporations, these billion-dollar corporations, which we spend thousands of dollars on, where they send us little more morsels of food, which still is the same amount of poison. We couldn't even deal with the bigger food. Now we got to have little, smaller morsels of food. The way out is a perception change. When you resist something, whatever, look, even if you're bulimic or anorexic, whatever it is, if you're compulsive in any way in your life and you have these issues and problems, if you're compulsive thinking, it's the resistance. It's the change of thinking and perception, realizing that's knowing the truth from the false. It also says that in here, in the doctor's opinion, right? Knowing the truth from the false, the truth will set you free. Having that perception change. So we're going to have it now. I just wanted to show you all this stuff and get it all here, but because I have it all around me here, it's crazy with all the stuff I had. I have, again, these steps, and then I'm going to read the solution so we could get to it at this meeting. You could this whole week, and whenever you leave here, it won't be like you'll tell your problems for an hour here, you'll feel good for an hour, and you go out the next 23 hours, you'll be miserable. We're going to have the solution here, so you'll have it here, you bring it to your heart, and then you'll have the resolution to your food addictions and eating, your problem with people. It's all the same thing. letting go and letting God. Look, I told the last meeting, a guy came in late. He came in very late. He says, can you explain a little bit what the meeting was? I just said, look, it's letting go. I mean, what else is there to explain? If you believe that right now, we don't even have to continue the meeting now. It's in step one. We admit we're powerless.